Okay, I have a piece here that I'm starting off with the view showing it what it looks like when it's carved. It's about 2/3 of the way done with the carving. It's not totally complete, but you can see the pattern as it's laid out. Here I'm using one of my old traditional tools with music wire, but in this video I'm going to be using a few new tools that I'm going to give it a try, see how they work out. Some of the tools I've used for different types of carving or relieving the surfaces, but I'm trying for a little bit. I'm trying a little bit differently today, and it turns out that a couple of them are actually a little more efficient, and they actually give me the kind of surface. If I want the flat surface, what I'm looking for. Sometimes I like to leave the little lines, looks like wood carving in there, so it gives it a little bit of a rough surface. But in this case, I like it a little bit smoother, and I'll be coming up with one of those new tools. They're not new; they're just new for me using them. I'm sure millions of people have used these other tools for different types of relief carving and for other purposes also here. Here I'm just brushing it off, get some of the little particles off there so I don't scratch my stained surface. So I'm starting to add a few of the vertical lines in the center band, and then the pattern I'll just develop it. Here's one of those new tools that I have not used basically on this part of the for this part of the carving, and it actually worked out pretty good. So I'll be using it more. I usually made my own music wire loop tools, but this one for what it cost and how well it worked, I'll probably be using it quite a bit more in the future. And it leaves me a nice little radius edge at the intersection of two lines there. And instead of being a music wire tool, it's a little bit, you can get the music wire in different thicknesses, but this one worked out pretty well. Here I'm using another tool that I've used in other places before for mainly like cleaning up the foot and stuff like that. But here I'm taking off larger surface. I made sure that the edge is pretty sharp on there, but anyway, it leaves me a flatter edge on there. And I'm just doing a rough draft relief cut on it now, just to take off some pretty large surfaces. And I'll come back in here with this tool and other tools and clean these edges up a little bit in the next few minutes here. So I have 16 sections go all the way around, just doing a rough draft relief cut on them, Sgraffito. Here you can see what the piece looked like as it's had that first draft cut done. So here I'm going to start to clean it up a little bit, sharpen up the edges between the remaining stain surface and the relief cut area. And I'll probably use two or three tools to do this when it gets down to the details. But here I'm just doing the rough draft of the clean on there, or the cutaway. And again, this tool I've not really used for this type of carving, so I'm just sort of experimenting with it also. But in general, it looks like it's working pretty good. It certainly was a lot faster than taking off the material, relief cutting it with the small loop tools. It was much quicker. And then it also gave me the surface I was looking for, not a groove surface, but a relatively flat surface or smooth surface. So here I'm using the larger loop tool again, just to clean up the base of that relief cut area, one of the 16 sections. So I'll just go all the way around and just clean that up a little bit. Again, this is kind of like the second stage of the relief cut, just doing a few cleanups, but there'll be a little bit more detail, uh, cleaning up the corners and the edges and the curves, things like that, so they look consistent all the way around. This is a Cone 5 clay. It's medium grog in it. It's not too large. It's not too small like porcelain. Uh, but in my case here, it doesn't get in the way. Doesn't leave large grooves when you drag the loop tool over it. So it's a pretty decent clay for the kind of carving I do on it. And this was thrown on my Pacifica wheel. Then it was allowed to go to leather hard. Then it was stained. It was cleaned up and stained. Here I am on one of my old wheels. I just flipped it over. I'm just going to clean up the base on the piece as it popped loose in the bat. I usually don't cut them off the bat. I usually leave them on the bat. They break loose and it leaves me a nice flat edge on the bottom. Then I come in there and clean it up. And these pieces, I usually store them in barrels. I can put two of them in a barrel at a time, stack them in there with milk crates, the plastic milk crates. So I store them in there, and I can keep them in there up to a week. Here I've cleaned up the base a little bit there, relief cut the area, just taking a little bit more material off there. After this part is done, I'll just smooth out the bottom so it won't scratch anything when it's set down on the table or anything. I'll usually put the little cork footings on them when they're completed, but anyway, I still like to smooth it off a little bit. So I'll be moving it back over to my Lockerbie wheel in just a couple of minutes. So here I'm back on the Lockerbie wheel. Now I'm going to start to add the patterns at the base. There were two bands that went all the way around, and I'll fill out each one of these sections with the curves. Here I'm using the traditional tool that I've used many times over. I have different sizes of these music wire loop tools, and that's primarily what I've used for the carving over the years. So this piece here has got pretty good amount of the carving done on it. It's just a few little touch up and clean up things. Here I'm using one of the new tools. Well, not new, but it's new for what I'm using it for, just to take off larger surfaces. Again, I probably should have tried this earlier, but I used to cut them off just like wood carving in grooves. But in this case here, it just leaves me a nice, clean, relatively clean edge. Then I can clean it up with the smaller loop tools if I need to. There's doing a band. So that has most of the carving on it right there. That stain will turn black when it's fired to cone 5, between cone 5 and 6. There are a couple of loop tools right there on the bat. I make these bats myself. I usually use particle board, put countertop material on it, and then I match drill the alignment pins on them for both the Lockerbie and the Pacifica wheel. So my bats usually line up. I can switch them back and forth. And I waterproof the bats. They last a very long time. In closing, I did like the new trim tools, at least new for me, and I'll be using those in the future. Thanks.